Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I am Chris, here to talk about Toy Story 4, which is the latest installment in the Toy Story franchise, directed by Josh Cooley. It is Pixar's new latest release, and quite a surprising one, actually. I think, I might be speaking for myself here, but I was very surprised when a Toy Story 4 was originally announced. I think, like everyone thought Toy Story was done 9 years ago, and I feel like the oldest person in the world thinking that Toy Story 3 was 9 years ago. I remember so distinctly going to see Toy Story 3 that it's very scary how quickly the time moves by. But even going before that, like I think Toy Story 2 was 1999, wasn't it? So it almost seems like we're pretty much getting a new Toy Story movie 10 years in between each time, which is mental that I watched this movie, well, Toy Story 1 as a kid, and here we are at the fourth one. There's a lot to talk about on this one, and I have many thoughts regarding this film and indeed the Toy Story franchise in general, which you guys have probably seen me talk about. Before I get into that, though, please feel free to jump on the comments and have a bit of a conversation with me about this film or Toy Story in general. Anything you like or dislike, let me know if you like this movie. Because it's good to get your guys' opinion too, and I can get a bit of interaction with you in the comments as well, so I'm not just here talking to a computer screen by myself. So the plot for Toy Story 4, for anyone who doesn't know or hasn't been following the trailers, this is according to IMDb. When a new toy called Forky joins Woody and the gang, a road trip alongside old and new friends reveals how big the world can be for a toy, which is a pretty empty plot synopsis, I'm not going to lie, because that basically makes it sound like every other Toy Story movie. Pretty much every other Toy Story movie has that plot. So, my opinions on Toy Story. Well, I have ranked this as my favorite animated series of all time. Well, I really want to call it the Toy Story trilogy. I can no longer call it the Toy Story trilogy now. It's my favorite animated series. The first Toy Story movie was a film that I played at nauseum as a kid. I had it on video. I still have it on video. And it'd be one where I'd watch it, I'd rewind it, I'd watch it again. I'd probably watch it 2 times per day, and I'd watch it over the course of the week. How I didn't wear out that video cassette tape, I have no idea. And then 2 came out, and that was the first movie, that was the first sequel in my mind that I was conscious of as a kid. This may sound very weird, but getting that teaser trailer for Toy Story 2 in, as a trailer to whatever film I was seeing at the time, it was understanding that concept of looking forward to a sequel to a film that takes place after a film that I'd already loved. I probably watched many sequels before that point, but that was the first one as a kid I remembered being, actively. I must have been about 5 years old or so at that time. And Toy Story 3, for a lot of us, was that big emotional send-off. We, and indeed the people at Pixar, John Lasseter at the time, who directed the first 2 Toy Story movies and was kind of like oversaw everything as an executive producer of Toy Story 3, they were adamant that that was the last one. They went out on a bang. They brought it full circle. It was an emotional farewell to all the toys. And me being roughly around the same age as Andy's character in that third film, and I've spoken about this on the channel, that Toy Story 3 really did hit me very hard emotionally. Like coming out of that movie, I felt like I needed that emotional release. I don't like crying in front of people in the cinema. And I went with a bunch of friends, so I kept all of that, that emotion, that raw emotion inside, and I should have let it out, and it wasn't a good sight, believe me. But that was the fitting farewell to the franchise. And then when, Pixar have gone on this whole sequel and prequel slew, we've had Cars 2 and 3. We've had, Monsters University, which was a prequel to the first Monsters, Inc. film. We had Finding Dory, and none of these sequel prequels have been particularly good. In fact, Pixar were an animated studio where it seemed like every movie they were making was hit after hit after hit. And then it seemed like they hit this very much how Walt Disney Animated Studios is going with the likes of, Wreck-It Ralph 2, Frozen 2. They've fallen into the sequel trap. And that's what I felt Pixar had fallen into. Also, we had Incredibles 2. I forgot about that as well, which I believe was announced around the same time that they announced Toy Story 4. And as soon as Pixar announced Toy Story 4, I was very worried. Because when you take a complete perfect trilogy and then you make another one seemingly for financial gain only, because Toy Story is a very lucrative product, not just in terms of film revenue, but also from merchandising. So it's a no-brainer for Pixar. Like, you make anything with Toy Story, you slap that name on anything, people are going to go and see it. And I was very cautious. To compare to another film trilogy that I considered a perfect trilogy, and then we got a fourth installment, which was awful in every way, shape, and form, was the Indiana Jones films with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from 2008. When you have a really bad fourth entry of a movie, which is tacked on to one of the most perfect trilogies of all time, it really does tarnish the name of it, and it really does upset me as a person who is passionate about these films. And going into this movie, even from the trailers, I wasn't excited by this thing. It really didn't seem like, from the trailers, it didn't seem like a story that needed to be told. It didn't look particularly inspired. I felt like after 9 years, this is the best story you can come up with, a love story between, which was, I think the tagline that was originally built for this movie was that it would be a love story between Bo Peep and Woody. And that was it. And then we got this mention of this Forky that was created, this inanimate object that's created, and he looked very annoying in the teaser trailer and the trailers, and the trailers were doing nothing for me for this film. So I went into this movie with an omen of dread. And then I was speaking to one of my friends, actually. She's in the comments right now, Sarah Matthews, giving you a shout out. She went to see opening night, came out and said, she was very similar to me in that, she wasn't looking forward to it. She had exactly the same reservations that I did, having really liked Toy Story 3 and how it capped everything off. She went to see opening night, came out and said, I thought it was fantastic. I'd probably rank it alongside 3, and it's about as emotional as 3 was, which was crazy to me, and I didn't even think this was possible. So I went to see it this morning. I went to a 12:40 showing in the afternoon. Fairly small turnout. There was quite a few people there, but not as packed as I expected it to be on a weekend, where all the kids are going to go and see it and everything like that. So it was a nice screening. Everyone was quiet. No one was crying. No one was shouting, which are the screenings that I like. And if I'm going to go into my overall opinions on this movie, because I know that I've talked to death on the intro already, I had a really good time with this one. Is it my favorite Toy Story movie? No. It's probably my least favorite Toy Story movie out of all 4 of them, but that doesn't mean I disliked the film, because the other Toy Story films are like up here. So to say that it's still great, but it's not as good as the other ones, that's still praise in my opinion. Like, it's very difficult to hit the heights that those previous 3 films have had. And in all honesty, like, I have seen those 3 movies countless times. This one I've only seen once, so I will probably have to watch it a number of times. But even coming out of this one, I'm kind of under the impression that I'll probably watch it a second time, but I'm not in a mad rush to watch it multiple times, if that makes sense to anyone. I'm just going to quickly scan the comments right now to see what you guys have been saying. We've got SeaWorld Man in the comments saying he almost teared up 3 times. I may have broke even with you there, or even might have beaten you there. I was crying in the first 5 minutes of this movie. Like actual tears, like ugly crying at this movie in like the opening. And we'll get to the ending when we get to spoilers, because I do not want to give anything away right now. This is going to be a general overview for spoiler free, and then I'll talk about spoilers later on, in case we do have anyone in the comments right now or who tunes in who hasn't seen it. Brinsley hasn't seen it yet, so won't stick around for spoilers. That's fine. The bulk of the section is going to be spoiler free, and I promise not to give anything away for you, because really the trailers haven't showed all that much. They really haven't. Like, the trailers came out, the teaser trailer was just a piece that was made specifically to be a trailer and wasn't actually any footage. And then we had a couple more films that came out after a couple of trailers that came out after that, but they still kept everything close to the chest. Like, we got the general theme of everything, but the actual core of the story and what was going to happen, we didn't see that in trailers. And I like going in being completely clueless. Sorry. Andrew Cates, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hopefully there will be a conclusion to this. Hopefully there will be a conclusion to the Toy Story franchise, because I don't hate Tom Hanks and Tim Allen wait every 10 years or so to play. Because I don't Tom Hanks and Tim Allen wait every 10 years or so to play Woody and Buzz. Yeah, I think what he's basically saying is that, it is a big span of time between each movies, and Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, and indeed none of us are getting any younger. So I do agree with that, and I will talk at the very end of my review. I will talk about where I think the future of Toy Story is going to be if it does continue. Sarah says, I don't know about a fifth one. Feel like they should just leave it now. I still feel like they should have left it at 3. I honestly do. Like, 3 was and is the perfect ending to me. The final shot of the movie is the opening shot of 1, for God's sake. Like, like the sky with the like the wallpaper, the sky with the clouds on. It was perfect. It was a perfect full circle. But nevertheless, we're here at Toy Story 4 now, so let's get into the review more. This is Woody's film. Now, Woody has sort of been the focal point of all the Toy Story movies. Yes, you have had the, Buzz Lightyear and their dynamic and the other toys in general. This is almost like a self-contained story about Woody. I see this film as more of an epilogue to 3. I know obviously it is a continuation. I still see 3 as the ending, and I see this as the epilogue. Kind of like with the X-Men films, how I see Days of Future Past as the end of the X-Men films, and then Logan is that epilogue to those X-Men films. Maybe a bit of a bad comparison, but that's how I see it. Woody's always been my favorite character, and at the core of every Toy Story film, his story has been what's driven those stories and themes across. He's then aided by all the other characters around him, which really get that through. But I definitely think that this is, out of all 4 movies, this is the one that is the most focused on Woody, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I think that this is a very tightly written story and very concise and effectively told story in terms of its themes and what it's doing with its characters, and where we find Woody at the beginning of this film and his mental state. And basically, we're introduced to Woody in this film, and again, this is not going to give anything away. This is going to be very bare bones. He's a lost toy. He feels like he doesn't have a purpose anymore. He's now one of Bonnie's toys, but even Bonnie's not playing with him very much, and her attentions are being drawn elsewhere, and she's creating new toys, and I'll get onto Forky later on. And he feels kind of useless and forgotten and out of place, which is a theme that's, been used with Woody before, in pretty much every single one, where he's almost replaced by Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 1, the thing of being forgotten and put on a shelf and, considering being a museum piece in Toy Story 2. And then the entire film of Toy Story 3 was the essence of being forgotten and having to move on. And it's more in that emotional vein of Toy Story 3, I would say. And as I said, it does feel like that epilogue. And I really like where we find Woody at the beginning of this film. The problem I have, and I don't know if any of you guys have this problem as well, so be sure to comment if you did have this problem as well. The gang, the other toys, even to the extreme of Buzz Lightyear, really feel like they take a back seat in this movie. Buzz Lightyear doesn't feel like you have that tight-knit duo of Woody and Buzz. It feels like it's more or less just Woody, and then all the other characters just kind of fade into the background. I do want to talk about Buzz Lightyear more in just a second, because I actually really dislike what they did with Buzz Lightyear in this film, and it's probably one of my biggest negatives on the film. The other characters, the gang, everyone, Mr. Potato Head, the aliens, Rex, Slinky Dog, all the characters that we've come to love really aren't there. SeaWorld Man says, where were my boys Lenny and Rocky? I think they explain, because I think the voice actor of Lenny died actually not long after Toy Story 2 came out. I think they wrote him out. I think what we're meant to infer with those toys that we don't see is that between Toy Story 2 and 3, when they say that they've lost a lot of friends like Wheezy and, I think he mentions someone else. And then in Toy Story 3, he mentions about Bo Peep being missing. I think we're just meant to assume that all those toys, sadly, have gone on to other owners and to futures untold. Sarah says, was it just me, or did you feel like they really dumbed Buzz down? Yes, I do, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in a second. I want to talk about all the other characters first, and then I'm going to circle it back around to my problems with Buzz. Bo Peep returns in this movie. That's not a spoiler. She's in the trailers, and as I said, that was the tagline that was initially pitched. Right off the bat, like, I was reading about the production of this movie, and right after 10 came out, they said they don't want to make any more Toy Story movies. They see Toy Story 3 as the ending, even so far as up to I think it was like 2014. I may be wrong about this. I think they still said that, they were unsure about a Toy Story 4 for a long time, purely because that 3 felt like a conclusion. And it passed from countless writers. There were loads of rewrites and everything like that on the film. And I think, people parted ways out of creative differences. And I think it was all depending on how much of a focus they wanted that love story to be. Whether the original script, was like, because I think it was even classed as a romantic comedy, that would have been a wildly different tone from Toy Story. And whilst that, the relationship and love angle is there and is present in the film, it really isn't a focus. And I'm glad that it isn't, because I think that would have made it a very different film. And I don't think that would have been a film that I would have enjoyed. I like that it's still a part of it, but it is very limited in that respect. And I was actually reading about the production of this thing, and there were concerns that were raised by the people that made the film, and they wanted to clarify that this isn't the case. And I don't feel that this was the case either, as I do with some female characters now in films. This is not me being misogynistic, sorry. This is just me reading what I found. There were reports that were saying that, Bo Peep is this, and you get this from the trailers too, that she is this very strong, independent, strong-willed female character, kind of in the vein of this new trend that we're seeing in Hollywood at the moment, with the likes of, Rey in Star Wars or Captain Marvel from the Marvel films. No one can beat her. She's untouchable. The whole #MeToo movement. And they said that they really didn't want that to be the case, because their idea for Bo Peep in being a strong character, independent character, was an idea way before #MeToo was even a thing. I really liked Bo Peep in this movie. I didn't actually check if it's the same voice actress who voiced her in the first 2 Toy Story films. I'm going to have to go back and check. Very quickly, Annie Potts, let's just see if she did. Yes, so it's the same voice actress. She sounded slightly different in this one. Maybe that's age, maybe that'll do to you, I don't know, but she didn't sound like Bo Peep, even though it is the same voice actress. I really liked her, and I liked her dynamic and how she filtered into the story. There really isn't a wasted, well, I'm not going to say there isn't a wasted character in this movie, because I just mentioned a few. Buzz Lightyear and the rest of the toys, they're kind of wasted characters in this film. But the characters that it does focus on, you've got Woody, you've got Bo Peep, you've got Forky, and you've got the villains in this film. And the story that the film tells with those characters is like a perfectly concise film. Let's just have a look at the comments. Andrew Kate says Woody and Buzz are the original Captain America and Iron Man. I completely agree. If you're going to do like a top 10 movie duos, like if Woody and Buzz aren't in that list, you're doing something wrong. No, I love what they did with Bo Peep. Even, that might be getting into spoilers, actually. I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to get into that. Let's talk Forky. Now, when trailers came out for this thing, Forky looked like one of the most irritating characters I've seen in a film in a long time. I'm talking Jar Jar Binks level. I think I posted a lot of my hate and disdain on the trailers and the initial hype behind Toy Story 4 purely based on the back of this character. When I saw the trailers and Forky was in the teaser trailer, I thought this can go either way. Either he's going to be brilliant, but what I'm seeing from these trailers, I'm worried. And honestly, he was one of my favorite characters in this movie. I loved Forky. I went to the Disney store yesterday when I went to town, and obviously they had all the Toy Story 4 merchandise there. And I looked at that toy of Forky and I thought, why would any kid want a toy of Forky or anything like that? After this movie, I can see why. I really loved his humor. Tony Hale does the voice of Forky, and the level of humor. Forky is a character who's been created out of an inanimate object, a spork, some pipe cleaners, some, lolly sticks and everything, popsicle sticks. And he's turned into a toy. He turns from an inanimate object into a toy. And it's this crisis of identity this character faces, this confusion of not knowing why he's alive, not knowing what his purpose is. You can tie that into Woody's arc as well. And the theme of this movie, without going specifically in depth into spoilers, is the inner voice, I think, and following your own calling. That's a theme that features very, very heavily in a lot of the characters, especially Woody, Bo Peep, even Buzz Lightyear, which they might take to the extreme. If people have seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And Forky, almost serves a sole function to be that voice and to help characters find their voice while still being some great comic relief. Towards the beginning of the film, he keeps seeing himself as trash. He's just meant for trash. And there are some jokes in this film, that one specifically, where they keep repeating it, and it does almost borderline on, okay, this is slightly annoying now, can we change track? And just when you get to that point, they do change it up, which I was grateful for, because I don't like humor that overstays its welcome. I loved Forky. I thought he was really endearing. They don't overuse him. He's used sparingly, and I really liked his little quips and sounds that he made. He's the most, lovably confused character I've seen in any of these films, I think. New characters also include, but are not limited to, Duke Kaboom, voiced by Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is on a huge hype at the moment. I mean, he's fresh off the back of the trilogy of the John Wick films, which are very successful and popular. He's going to be starring in a new video game, Cyberpunk 2077. He's doing a new Bill and Ted movie next year. Like, the guy's on a roll, and now he's supplying the voice for Duke Kaboom. And I love that Keanu Reeves has had that resurgence the last couple of years. Duke Kaboom is a great character. I kind of liken him to Keanu Reeves's Ken character from Toy Story 3, who isn't in this movie, sadly, but where they get that celebrity voice actor that just absolutely knocks it out of the park and almost steals the show. Loved Duke Kaboom, and the fact that he's voiced by Keanu Reeves just makes him even better. Loved his quip. Let's see what people have been saying. Woody, did you have a Woody and Buzz Lightyear toy? Yes, I did, and they're in my loft, or attic, I guess, if you're from the US. And I feel really bad about that. After seeing Toy Story 3 and those toys going up into the attic, it broke my damn heart. So I might have to go and liberate my Woody and Buzz toys from out of the attic at some point. But no, Duke Kaboom was great, and Key and Peele as well. So they do quite big up that celebrity voice cast in this one for the support characters. I'm not massively into Key and Peele's humor. I don't watch their show. It doesn't get broadcast in the UK. I know that there's a bunch of YouTube videos there, and I've seen some of them, but it's not really my kind of humor, although I do appreciate what they do. I really liked their characters in this film. I didn't love them to the extent that I did Duke Kaboom, for example, but they did have some funny moments, including one of the best jokes in the film, which I'm not going to give away right now. I'll talk about it in spoilers. I honestly think that most of their dialogue in this movie was purely improvised. They are great at improvised humor, and a lot of it felt like they would just, get them in a recording booth and let them just have that natural back and forth with each other and see what comes out. Obviously, they probably did have to stick to a script at some point, but it did feel like they did go off the cuff. And I think that Pixar would allow them to do that because of, that's where they get some absolute gems of humor there. So they were really funny characters. They play this plushy bunny and a duck. You'll have seen them in the trailers. And again, from my reaction videos that I did, I think there was like a little trailer that came out with those characters where they were kind of taking the piss out of the To Infinity and Beyond line. And that really angered me and rubbed me up the wrong way. They only dropped that line once in the movie, and, they were fine. I enjoyed them for what they are. As I say, there seems to be a big focus in this movie on the new, to the point where they could perhaps continue this in some vein with all of these new toys. They are kind of pushing those old toys out of the way a little bit, which was a shame. I would have liked to have seen more of them. Let's talk about the villains in this film. This was not a good time for me at the cinema. This might be the best horror film that I see all year. And I am not joking about that. In a couple of weeks' time, or at the end of next week, I'll be going to see the new Annabelle film, which is about a scary, haunted doll. And you know what? After seeing this movie, I don't think that movie's going to have the same impact on me anymore. The villains in this film were terrifying. So the villain in this film is Gabby Gabby, who's this sort of, like this China doll looking thing, voiced by Christina Hendricks. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of her story, but nevertheless, she does need Woody for a reason. And she does have a very tragic backstory, like a lot of the Disney villain, the Toy Story villains do. Apart from Sid, Sid was just a bad kid. Sid was just horrible from the beginning. Misunderstood kid, maybe a lot of family problems that we didn't see on screen. But you had Stinky Pete, and I would say out of all of the Disney villains, with Lotso and Stinky Pete, I would say that this villain Gabby Gabby is an amalgamation of those two. There are elements which I'll talk about in the spoilers more about her character, and actually the resolution to Gabby Gabby's story did bring me to tears. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie. um, I would say that the villain Gabby Gabby doesn't really have as much personality as the likes of Sid or indeed Stinky Pete and maybe Lotso as well. So in many ways, I would say that she's the weakest of the villains purely for being perhaps slightly forgettable. But in terms of her story, I thought it was incredibly emotional, and it was nice to have a link between, I guess they kind of have done this with Stinky Pete and Lotso, but I felt like the link was stronger in this one. The link between Woody, the protagonist, and Gabby Gabby, the antagonist of the film. You can really, they're like two, they could end up at the same place, essentially, and they have an understanding with each other, and they need, you know, there's some great dialogue scenes between the two characters, and it's very difficult for me to talk about it without going into spoilers, so I guess I'm going to leave it there. The thing that was the scariest the most, though, was her henchmen. You'll have seen them in the trailers, ventriloquist dummies. So I have a phobia of ventriloquist dummies, okay? Like waxworks, like Madame Two Swords, waxworks dummies, ventriloquist dummies. I think it's called automatonophobia. It's a real thing. Look it up, Google it. I hate those puppets. I think it all stems from watching an early Goosebumps episode as a kid, which fucked me up for life. They're terrifying. And believe me, I saw that trailer and I was really worried because I knew they were going to be terrifying. They are. The way they walk, the way they look, the way they jump scare you in the film, they'll jump out of nowhere. They have this horrible like manic grin, and they kind of have their head lulled to the side at all times, and like this really sort of like gammy walk, like they're walking with a broken leg or something. These gangly arms, they're horrific. And there's a scene in this movie, the bulk of the film is not entirely, but it's set between more or less three locations. You've got the RV where the toys are staying, you've got the carnival, and you've got the antique shop. It feels like a very smaller self-contained movie and not as expansive as the likes of, Toy Story 3, where you've got, trash conveyor belts and furnaces and, the daycare center and how expansive it is. Or even Toy Story 3, where it ends up on like an airport conveyor belt, and then you've got this, Al's toy barn, and then you've got his office apartment, and the airport sequence at the end feels very smaller than that. And the bulk of it takes place in this very creepy and haunting antique shop. And I'm going to talk about the animation as well, because the animation in this was flawless. Stands to reason because, we have had 9 years in advance. Not to say that any of the Toy Story films look particularly bad. I think, the humans look a little bit dated in Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2. But it still looks as good as ever. But the attention to detail in the environments, probably the amount of stuff they can have on screen now, and the lack of limitations they have, it looks absolutely gorgeous. The one thing that I didn't like about the animation, though, was some character redesigns, specifically Andy. We get some flashbacks to a younger Andy in the film, and they've completely redone his character model, as I think they did with all of the Incredibles characters as well. I seem to remember there was a difference in appearance between the Incredibles characters with Incredibles 2, and it just looks a little bit weird, and it doesn't really look like Andy. But besides that, the level of detail, when you get to the antique shop, I'm sure, and Pixar do this so well as well, where they like to hide a lot of references in there. And I did pick out 2 references that I saw. There's probably a whole lot more, and it's probably one of those cases where you do get that wide shot of the antiques room, and it kind of looks like the Room of Requirement from the Harry Potter films. If you pause that and you zoom in, I'm sure there's a bunch of like Disney and Pixar artifacts littered all around for eagle-eyed lookers of Easter eggs and things like that. But you've got like dust and cobwebs and items, and just the environments themselves are absolutely stunning. The animation's second to none. So I'm going to get on to my problems with Buzz Lightyear, and it's kind of been hinted at by Sarah in the comments, where they're saying she felt like they dumbed Buzz down. I completely agree with that, and they kind of harp on this one joke. He is almost a one-trick pony in this film, in that he has a conversation with Woody in the film, and Woody's talking about his inner voice, his consciousness. His conscience, sorry. And Buzz takes that as literal, like voice inside you, referring to Woody's pull string and, the buttons that Buzz pushes on his chest to, do a catchphrase. To the point where he starts making all of his decisions by pressing the buttons on his chest. It's funny for the first time, but when you really break that down, that Buzz really doesn't seem to kind of have any free thinking of his own or free thought. He's relying on these buttons. It almost felt like the Buzz Lightyear that we get when we're first introduced to him, where he still thinks he's a space ranger, where he doesn't really know what he is and understand that he's a toy and what that means, and that he's sentient and, he has free thinking and things like that. It did feel like they regressed Buzz Lightyear and they played him for laughs and they really dumbed him down. I'll completely agree with that. And that's the one thing that I didn't like. I did really miss that Woody and Buzz dynamic. I know in the other films, specifically Toy Story 2, Woody is away from the main cast of characters for a long time, but he's introduced to new characters. You've got Jesse, you've got Stinky Pete, you've got Bullseye, you've got the stuff going on with Al and the history of Woody's Roundup and Toy Story's and Woody's TV show. Whilst then you've got Buzz and all the other toys trying to get to him. So you are still pairing. There is still some interesting stuff going on with Woody, with new characters that we're introduced to, and Buzz with all of the characters that we're familiar with and that we know. But they all meet up at the end of Toy Story 2. This one, really not so much. We don't really get much time specifically with Woody and Buzz together, which I was really kind of a little bit miffed about. And I do think that was a big missed opportunity. And one of the reasons that I would probably rank this as my least favorite. It didn't seem like it gave me that same magic with all the characters. As an epilogue piece, it works because it is a nice continuation onto 3, and it is almost like that the ending of 3 part 2. So it is nice to see how it would all play out. You could end this series at Toy Story 3. You absolutely could, and I do still think that Toy Story would make a perfect trilogy. This is not a nice little companion piece. It does really feel like a spin-off in many ways. You know how they did, for anyone who doesn't know, they did 2 animated shorts, I think, of Toy Story. I know there was a Halloween one, and then there was another one with like this reptilian toy in it, which I'm forgetting the name of it. House of Terror, was it? Or something like that. I forget the name. It feels in the same vein as that. It feels like a feature film version of one of those stories. But with that being said, it still does have some incredibly emotional moments. As I said, I did cry multiple times at this film within the first 5 minutes, with something in the middle, when certain characters were in peril. I am so invested in these characters. I've been invested in these characters for the best part of 20 years of my life. Or more than that, actually, probably. Like, I'm 26. Like, I can't remember when I saw Toy Story for the first time. Maybe I was like 4 or something like that. I'm not really sure. It's been a long time. So, and having those toys as a kid, having the Woody and Buzz, having those tangible artifacts. I was a very lucky kid. Like, praise to my parents and everything. Like, they were absolute saints. Like, I never wanted for anything. I probably was spoiled quite a lot as a kid in terms of toys. But I had a Woody and Buzz, and being able to play with those toys and connecting with Andy and feeling like him. And, I even did the thing. I even wrote my name on the bottom of their feet and everything. Black marker. I wrote Chris on the bottom of their feet. SeaWorld Man says, when did I turn 26? So my birthday is on January the 21st. So I will be 27 in January upcoming, which makes me feel very old. Oh, God, I'm pushing 30. Jesus Christ. But yeah, no, Toy Story is nice that it is always there. And I feel like the praise that I can give this film, although it is my least favorite Toy Story film, is that it feels like there's been a Toy Story film for every part of my life in some different way. And it's always spoken to me at that particular part of my life. So Toy Story 1 comes out, you're a kid, you're playing with toys, you want to treat toys nice and not be like a horrible, nasty kid like Sid and blowing up toys and making them into horrible, mutated messes. It was nice. It was just like a fun kids film, kids adventure film. Toy Story 2 comes out and you get into the, maybe I was still too young for it at this point, but I kind of agree with it now, with that getting older, and maybe some of those toys that you're playing with, you won't play with them as much now. You'll probably shelve them or get rid of them or be a bit dismissive, and also brought into the topic of, toys being a collector's item and being a museum piece. And then when I was getting ready to go to university or college, I think I was about, when was I? I was about 18, I think, or something like that. You probably do the math. I've probably got that wrong, but I was around about the same age as Andy was in Toy Story 3, getting ready to go to uni, or I just started uni or something like that. So that saying goodbye to your childhood, saying good, appreciating the memories you had as a kid with these toys that helped get you through it, but having to put that aside now or pass them on to someone else for the next generation, almost like a circle of life kind of thing, and going off into the unknown and saying goodbye to your childhood. The moment where like he's passing all the toys on to Bonnie and he's about to hand over Woody and he recoils a little bit and draws him in. That was the one moment that spoke volumes to me with that film. I love the ending of Toy Story 3. This one, it is that new generation with Bonnie in there, but the themes of the story with Woody, I think like the themes of the other films at the back of it, they were Andy's toys. Although Andy wasn't the main character, it was his current state which influenced where the plot went. With this movie, it was the character of Woody that influenced where the plot went. And that not knowing your place in life and things like that, I think that definitely does speak to me right now as an individual. And I think I gravitated towards that, and that possibly having to move on or come to terms with how things are. Woody's a character in this movie that's swimming against the tide, but the tide one day will have to win out. He just needs to see that, essentially. Overall thoughts on this movie. I think it's currently at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I wouldn't rank it that high. Really quickly going into the comments, the Moon Chin King says, a welcome. Thank you for joining the stream. Hopefully you're still tuning in. As I said, please get more thoughts about Toy Story. Did any of you have a Woody or Buzz toy as a kid? What toys did you have that you really enjoyed playing with? Were any from Toy Story? Anything like that? Please do let me know. Seaworld Man says, should do a birthday video, or should have done a birthday video. Maybe I will next year. I don't know what the future leads and where I'm going to be next year. It's 2020 is a very startling concept to me, especially the age of being 27 as well. We'll see what happens. But yeah, no, definitely. I'll do a birthday video, sure. Overall thoughts. I did enjoy this movie. I laughed. I cried. The movie did exactly what it needed to. But I can't help but feel slightly underwhelmed when you rank it next to the previous three. I do think the other three have a stronger script, maybe, but the balance of characters, I would say, and the charm and the humor and the serious message, I thought gelled better in the previous three. My favorite Toy Story movie is always going to be Toy Story 1. Like that was the original. That was the first one I saw. That movie will forever be a crown jewel in my memory, my nostalgia, and my heart. Like, this sounds really soppy, but honestly, like, this is what I mean. Toy Story does mean so much to me as a film. Like, I look at films that mean so much to me as a kid. It's like, Star Wars, even Phantom Menace. Like, Phantom Menace was the first Star Wars movie I got into. I'd have Star Wars. I'd have the original, well, Tim Burton's Batman, 1989, because it was the first superhero film I ever watched, and this movie would be right up there. Disney's Hercules as well was another one that I really connected well with as a kid. Had like all the McDonald's Happy Meal toys and things like that. And Toy Story is in animation history, is the first fully computer animated film out there. And look at the company now, like Pixar and Disney. Look at all the animated films that are coming out now. They're all computer animation. And, Pixar is right at the forefront of that. I would still recommend this movie if you're a Toy Story fan. Like, if you're a hardcore Toy Story fan and you were there for Toy Story 3 and you felt like that was the ending, believe me, I get it. Give this one a chance. You might not like this one as much as the previous three, but there is still a story that is being told there, and there is still some substance to it, and there is still the emotion, and Pixar is so good at that. My problems stem from the balance of character, from not getting time with, not getting enough time with the original cast members, and also how they significantly, dumbed down Buzz's character. They're my biggest negatives. The villain as well, whilst I really enjoyed her story, I didn't think she was particularly as memorable or as charismatic as some of the previous villains. But then again, at least they're doing something different with the character somewhat. So there is that. There's some great laughs in there. There's some great sight gags that, you'll just clock in the background and things like that. I had a really good time with it. And Would I rush to buy this film? Here's the thing. So I've got Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 on Steelbook Blu-ray, which when they were a thing, I don't know if anyone remembers this, Disney reward points. If you bought a Disney DVD or something like that, there'd be a little code that you type in and you'd get so many points that would add to your account. You could then use those points to exchange for a lot of Disney merch, whether like the biggest amount of points would be like a Steelbook Blu-ray of the film. You'd get some DVDs, then there'll be like some stickers or like a little toy or something like that. I got Nightmare Before Christmas, Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, and I think it was Monsters Inc. on Steelbook Blu-ray. I had a lot of points. I bought all of the Disney animated classics on DVD pretty much in one go. So as you can imagine, I accumulated quite a lot of points from those. I'm going off on a tangent anyway, a Disney tangent, but overall opinions on the movie. I think it is the weakest Toy Story film out of all four, but it's still a cut above the rest. It's nowhere near as bad as the likes of, I mean, I didn't like Incredibles 2. You look at all the other Disney sequels that have come out before, it's not those movies. Those movies feel like they were just made for financial gain only. And whilst this one probably was, let's be honest, because Toy Story 3 made a lot of money and Toy Story 4 is going to make a lot of money too, it felt like they did take their time and come up with a story for this thing. And where this movie ends, I can't tell you where it ends, but it feels very definitive, like it feels, but then again, I said that with Toy Story 3 and 9 years later, look where we are, right? So I'm sure they could probably do a Toy Story 5 if it really came to that, but I do think the future of this, and they've even said this, is going to be on TV or streaming service with Disney's new Disney Plus, which is coming out later this year, I believe. I think it's this year. Let me just double check that very quickly. Yes, November 12th, 2019, Disney Plus goes live. I know they've got a whole slew of shows they've already got planned, including 2 Toy Story ones. So I think, at least for a while, like what existed after Toy Story 3 with the 2 animated shorts they made, it's going to be on TV for a while, and then maybe in 9 years' time, 10 years' time, if the cast is still alive, we'll probably get a Toy Story 5. So that'll do it for my overall opinions on Toy Story 4. So this is your spoiler warning. Brinsley, you might have to tune out now, dude, but thanks for joining in. If you're still watching it right now, I am going to go into spoilers. I'm not going to talk ad nauseum about this movie, but I am going to talk about the ending especially and some plot points that I do, specific ones that I do want to talk about. So this is your warning. If you haven't seen Toy Story 4, please go and watch it. Don't get it spoiled for you because there's so much that doesn't appear in the trailers that you should check out for a first-time viewing. So the intro of this film did catch me off guard a little bit. It starts off with a caption 9 years ago, and we see a young Andy, and RC's there, and Bo Peep's there, and I'm very confused as to what's going on because initially when I see 9 years ago, I think how much time has happened in between Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4. It's been 9 years. So, 9 years ago would be when Andy was at college age, when he was getting ready to leave. But I was thinking, well, RC had left or had been passed on. Bo Peep had been passed on. And then young Andy comes in, and I'm really confused. And then I realized that it's 9 years ago from the date of Toy Story 3. So obviously he's at college age. He's about probably like 18 years old or something like that. 9 years ago, he's young Andy. He's 9 years old. So it would be in between Toy Story 2 and 3, essentially. And RC, the car, one of my favorite characters in Toy Story, is outside in the rain. He's in the gutter. He's being dragged down the drive and almost going to fall into the sewers. And right then, like, I was edge of my seat. My heart was palpitating out of its chest. Palpitating, is that a word? Have I just made up a Star Wars character name there? I don't know. It was intense. Like, not quite as intense as the Inferno scene from Toy Story 3, but it was up there. Like, I was in it. My favorite characters were in peril. I don't like to see my favorite characters almost dying or falling. It was horrible. And then we get You've Got a Friend in Me, which is a standard, like, Toy Story. I think, of all the Toy Story movies did that, played You've Got a Friend in Me. I think Toy Story 2 played it at the end, didn't it, with Wheezy the penguin singing it at the very end, more upbeat. Toy Story 3 opened with, You've Got a Friend in Me, but that felt like it was full circle. They kind of do that with this movie, and you get like this little montage of Toy Story 1 to 3 where it's almost like a recap. It did kind of feel a little bit pointless maybe, but it gets you back into it. It's like, if you're a long-time fan, throws you right back into that Toy Story world. But man, that RC, way to open a movie. So you get your Disney logo at the start, and you get your nice little whimsical Toy Story Toy Story music, sorry, and then boom, thunderstorm, rain, and like RC's like almost drowning, and Woody's almost getting run over and shit like that. Like, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrific. Moving to horrific, I'm gonna jump now forward into the movie. Introduction to Gabby Gabby and the ventriloquist dummies. Horrific scene, which I've already talked about. I'm not going to go in depth into it, but I think this was intentional. The music that plays, because it's like an old antique store, there's like old, like 1920s style gramophone music playing. And the song that plays when we're introduced to Gabby Gabby and the ventriloquist dummies, which sounds like a really, really bad band name, doesn't it? Gabby Gabby and the ventriloquist dummies, is the song from The Shining, Midnight and the Stars and You. The Shining is my favorite horror film of all time. The first time I saw that film, it absolutely traumatized me, and it still does to this day. So hearing that very eerie 1920s style song is creepy in itself, with that old, like, kind of really bad audio quality from the time, and the voice that the guys, the guys who used to do those kind of songs used to sing in. They used to sing in a very like high raised voice. If you've heard the song, you know what I'm talking about. And I can only assume that the people at Pixar have an affinity for Jack Nicholson, because I remember in Inside Out, there was a Chinatown reference, which was obviously, like a big Jack Nicholson movie. And in this movie, I have to believe that that was a Shining reference. Like, they threw that song in there for a specific purpose. So I thought that was very effective. And that didn't ease my anxiety when it got to that scene. Like, not only am I witnessing these horrific dummies, they're also playing a song that reminds me of the most traumatizing horror movie I've ever seen in my life. So it was a winning combination, really. But it was effectively done. I'm very surprised that no kids were, I was scared. Like, I was recoiling in my seat. Like, my leg was up and everything like that. I was like hiding my face at the jump scares with these dummies. They were horrific. There were some little kids in the audience. Like, none of them cried. None of them had to be carried out or anything like that. But Sarah, I think you can probably type in the comments now. I believe that you said there was a lot of kids screaming at the back of your movie theater when those things are on screen. I like when films can do that, though. Like, kids films like have absolute nightmare fuel. You look back at like some of the old Disney movies, like they just straight up didn't give a shit. Or like some of those 80s like films like Neverending Story or Return to Oz. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, those movies were borderline horror. And I like when movies can have that, when they can have, they are funny like kids films, but they do have that element of danger to it as well. Yeah, Sarah says there was one moment when a child screamed near the end. I want to talk about some of my favorite jokes in the film. Now, I don't want this to be a laundry list of all of my favorite jokes, because that just gets boring, but two that definitely stood out to me the most. The combat Carl joke was brilliant. It's a little sight gag. There's these three combat calls, and they're all the same voice actor, and they're all talking in unison. And there's three of them, and it's the classic two's company, three's a crowd. Two of them are high-fiving each other, and there's this poor third guy at the end who's like raising his hand to get a high five in, and they just completely ignore him. And it happens twice. It broke my damn heart, because he goes to high five Woody as well, and Woody just straight up ignores him. And he's got no expression on his face, but he just kind of sinks down, like, really sad. I thought that was... You never see those characters again. They're in one little scene, but for some reason, like, I was crying laughing at that scene. And I don't know, like, I went to see this movie with my girlfriend, and she said that because Combat Calls obviously were like a real toy, they were an actual toy line, and she was unsure if that third one who wasn't getting any attention was like a certain line of that toy that didn't sell particularly well, or people didn't like, or something like that. I don't know if that's the case, but if that is, that's genius that they did that. But my favorite joke, and boom, Sarah's got it right there, Plush Rush. So this was a very different style of humor that we haven't seen in Toy Story before, where it's a potential what if scenario. Like, what if we did this? They're trying to get the key, or they're trying to distract the old lady who runs the antique store. And it's a Key and Peele joke. And this is what I mean. This might have been them like spitballing ideas and stuff like that in the recording booth, or writing down different ideas and scenarios and passing them on to the writers. I don't know. But they're thinking like, how can we distract this old woman? And they've like we've got it. And then it will cut to a possible what if scenario of them doing it. And it's a joke that repeats, but it gets increasingly more and more ridiculous every single time. Yeah, as Sarah's puts, like the longer it went on, the funnier it got. The last scenario, not counting the ones in the credits, is that they follow the old lady back to her house. They get in the car. They wait till she's had a bath. They wait till she's like made some food, gone to bed, and everything like that. And then when she's in bed, they're gonna like pounce on her and like get the key out of her or something like that, or like murder her. We don't know. The beauty of it is the camera cuts to outside the house, and we just hear her screaming. So they could be like stabbing her to death or something. Like the power of imagination is powerful with this thing. I thought that was easily the best joke in the movie, and they do repeat it in the end credits, which doesn't quite have the same impact, but nevertheless. What else can I talk about this film? I'm trying to think if there's anything in the main. Oh, I did want to talk about two of the references that I did pick out, Pixar references. There's a moment when they go to daycare. I think you see a lunchbox, or it might have been a lunchbox in Bonnie's room. I'm not sure. I think it's when they go to the daycare center or kindergarten or whatever it is. You see a lunchbox. You see a lunch. I'm going to be able to speak. I'm going to take a sip of water first. Let's try again. You see a lunchbox on the floor, and the design on it, I forget the name of the character. It was this lizard gladiator general that was in one of the Toy Story shorts that they made in between, Toy Story 3 and this movie. His design, his logo is on the front of the lunchbox, which I did clock there. And the other reference I saw is where Bo Peep leads Woody to, I think it's the inside of a pinball machine. It kind of reminds me of the inside the vending machine from Toy Story 3, where you've got all these toys in there. It's where we get introduced to Duke Kaboom. The toy that opens the door to them, kind of like the password guy, was the tiny toy soldier, which was it's one of Pixar's first animated shorts. The animated shorts, I think it's called Tin Soldier. I think I might be forgetting the name of it. And he's chased by this baby. He's this little red toy in a little cute hat with like cymbals and a big bass drum at the back. He's the toy that opens the door. And I thought that was a really nice callback to, Pixar's very earlier days. I think that was like one of the first animated shorts they made right alongside the lamp that, you see in the intro logo to every Pixar film. Let's talk about Gabby Gabby's storyline and how that wraps up. And then I'm going to talk about the ending and then the future of Toy Story. So Gabby Gabby wants Woody for his voice box in his chest. She's basically, and this is where I say she's kind of an amalgamation between Stinky Pete's character and Lotso Hugging Bear from Toy Story 3. Stinky Pete was a character that was, always remained in the box, and he has a throwaway line towards the end of the movie that kind of does sum his whole character up and why he's doing what he's doing. He says, fair, I'll tell you what's fair, spending a lifetime on a dime store shelf watching every other toy be sold. He's seeing all these other toys getting played with and bought and loved and cherished and everything like that, and getting that playtime with, and he always remained in the box and never had that love or affection. So he wants to be a museum piece in order to have immortality, essentially, so that he can be, loved forever and cherished forever. Lotso Hugging Bear was that he felt abandoned by his owner, that, he thought that she abandoned him, but it turns out that she was just lost, but he created this whole empire, this, he made himself the boss of this daycare center based on a lie and manipulation. So in both of those characters, you have the essence that they feel abandoned, they have abandonment issues, they feel like they haven't been loved or played with or anything like that, and find it hard to connect. Gabby Gabby's in between, in that she is almost like an antique. She is almost like a museum piece, very much like Stinky Pete, that she has been put on this shelf for years and years, has never been played with because she was defective. Right out the gate, she was defective. No one wanted to play with her. And there's a moment which is just so heartbreaking for the character that, she is creepy, she is terrifying, but she just wants to be loved. And there's a moment where, Woody donates his voice box to her and says, you know what, you can have it. You can have my voice, essentially. And she feels complete. She feels good. And she finally has this chance to be played with by this kid, who comes into the antique store a lot. She's reading this book that's got like a picture of the kid that looks exactly like the kid that comes into the store. And the kid picks her up and goes, I don't really want this toy, and just throws it away. So no matter that she's complete and she's a good toy and she works, no one still wants her. Um, Sarah says, I laughed, I won't lie. That's really fucked up. Like, I was really, really upset about this character. And then later in the film, you know, she kind of joins the good side and she sees this lost kid at the carnival. And she was going to go on with the toys and go back to Bonnie, but she says, you know, I want to go and help this kid. This kid's crying. She's lost a parent. She needs someone. I'm going to go to this kid. So she kind of props herself up ready. They cause a distraction so that the kid finds the doll, and you know the kid has this bond with a toy, and they find the parents. Although I would say, if I was in the same situation, if I was a kid, because that was always like the worst feeling on earth, right? Like losing your like going to a crowded place and losing your parents, like you felt like the end of the world had hit, like you felt completely lost. If I was in that same situation and I saw this really creepy baby doll, like I wouldn't pick it up. Like, no, that's how horror movies start. That's how Annabelle starts. Like, I am not doing it. I am leaving that creepy baby doll where it is. It's on its own, there for a reason, and there it shall remain. I can like go on happy with my life. Thank you very much. I did think it was a nice ending for Gabby Gabby, and I do like how that feeling of being lost, being a lost toy, did tie into Woody's mental state and how he did come around very easily to the antagonist of this movie. I can't really call her an antagonist. She's only an antagonist. Sorry, she's only an antagonist in the way that, you know, she apprehends some of the characters. She's got the creepy henchman and everything like that. But inherently, she's not really a villain. She just kind of wants the same thing that every toy has in the movie. Sarah says, what did you think about Woody actually considering getting in the box with Bo Peep at the start? He was Andy's favorite toy, but there was a moment where he thought about it. That was where I cried. Well, alongside, you know, the tears of really not wanting RC to die, but that bit where he was going to get in the box, that dilemma there, I loved because, you know, Bo Peep and Woody always had a connection. She was very flirtatious with him in the first Toy Story film, but she always had that connection there, even though it never amounted to anything. And then when we learn in Toy Story 3 that she'd gone, like she just, you know, been sold or moved on to another owner or broken or thrown out. We didn't know what happened to her at that point. I think he does say like moved on to other owners. And seeing this flashback in between there, I really did like that. That, you know, even back then, Woody was tempted. It was always on his mind. But as he said, loyalty. Honestly, if you're going to do like a list of the most loyal characters in films, you're going to have like Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings, and a close number two is going to be Woody. The extremes that Woody goes to in this film is really admirable. It makes me absolutely love his character. He does have incredibly selfish and, you know, big-headed moments in the films. You know, you go back to Toy Story 1 where he knocks Buzz out of a window just so that he can be top dog. And you see how far he's come in this movie and how he's still trying to be that leader quality. He does have that leader aspect in trying to calm everyone down, trying to be the peacekeeper and everything like that. But getting in the box with Bo Peep and wanting to go with her. Sarah says, did you work out what was going to happen? Because when I was speaking to Sarah, she mentioned that she could kind of probably guess where the movie was going to go at that point. I could see the theme they were going for and that wanting to let go. I didn't see it to the point where he was going to go off with Bo Peep, which will get me onto the ending in a second. But I did see that maybe he'd go off on his own or something, or he'd leave the toys behind, essentially. But then I just kind of got wrapped up with the rest of the film that I kind of forgot all of my previous predictions at the beginning of the film. So let's talk about the ending. So they're all there. They're all ready to go with Bonnie. Bo Peep's very independent and she's going to stay on her own. So she says goodbye to Woody. Very emotional. That's where the waterworks start. And then he's going to go with the toys and he goes up to Buzz. And I can't remember the line exactly. I think Buzz says something like, she needs you, Woody. And, you know, he kind of thinks that he means Bonnie. But deep down, you know what he means as a viewer. And he says, Bo needs you. And he turns back to Bo and she looks at him. There's some beautiful moments in this film where Woody is so in love with Bo Peep. Like, the connection that these two characters have, and you know, he'll be sat with Bo Peep and they'll be looking out at the world or some like lights or something or the city, and Bo Peep's look, and this from a single glance you can read so much into these characters that Bo Peep has her eye fixed on the horizon. she's very nomadic. She's in throughout the film, like you really get a sense that no place is home. She's always on the move. She talks about getting as part of a carnival and moving on somewhere else. Her eyes are fixed on the horizon, where she's going to go, freedom, the ability to go anywhere, to do anything, to see all these wonderful sights that she's not going to see when she's, just being a toy where she's locked in a house. And Woody's gaze is on her the whole time, completely in love with her. And it's beautiful. And I'm getting emotional talking about it now, for God's sake. Like, goddamn, this is the impact that this movie had on me. And like, when you get to the end and she's looking at him and he's looking at her, and then they rush into each other's arms, it's fucking beautiful. Like, I'm a romantic at heart, and that was really nice. But then, as if my heart hadn't been ripped out of my chest, this is where, it was full on, like, out of my chest, like, beating heart in my hand. This is huge. Woody leaves all of the gang, Buzz and the rest of the toys. Says goodbye, leaves them all behind, and they go their separate ways. Now, I felt like I said goodbye to all the characters at the end of Toy Story 3, and I do think that the goodbye that Andy has to the toys is much more emotionally wrought than the goodbye at the end of this movie. But when it was happening, I think I audibly went like, no. Like, I think like the words just sort of like escaped out of my mouth as I was watching it, when I realized what was going to happen, and that he was going to say goodbye, not to just all of the toys, but to Buzz. This duo, the dynamic duo of Woody and Buzz was going to be severed forever, perhaps. We don't know. Like, if there's a Toy Story, if they make a Toy Story 5, here's the thing, they're going to find a way to get them back together. They're going to have like 10 years apart and get back together. But if this is it, like, this is it. Like, this feels like the end of Woody's character. Like, following this movie, I don't know what else you could do with Woody. It feels like you've explored every single avenue. You've done everything. You've ticked every box. I thought they ticked every single box at the end of Toy Story 3, but they still managed to find something else to talk about, with Toy Story 4. He felt like he was a lost toy. He even says in the film he feels like he doesn't have any purpose. He feels just completely and utterly empty, like he doesn't know what to do. He feels like he wants to be there for Bonnie, but Bonnie doesn't really want him. First off, screw Bonnie. I've always hated Bonnie. Fuck that bitch. Like, her dad's like treading on Woody's face, like, no regard for him at all. She doesn't care. Like, screw this. Like, she was playing with him in Toy Story 3, but now, oh yeah, she's playing with all the other toys, but not Woody. Like, fuck this girl. I hate her. Woody knows that there's inherently no future in the future with Bonnie. And if he stays there, it's just going to go back to like Toy Story 3. History's going to repeat itself. He's just going to be stored, and he's going to be miserable, and he's going to be a lost toy with no purpose. And that's the big thing for Woody. He needs purpose. He needs a goal. He needs to apply himself to something. And when he's introduced to Bo in this film, and there's that promise of freedom and this life beyond what he knows, like his comfort zone, it really is Woody coming out of his comfort zone and taking a leap of faith and, trusting. And it's almost like it feels like a retirement of the character. Like, he's done his duty, he's worked all of his life, he's tried to be a provider of memories and happy memories and dreams and stuff for kids, like, growing up with Andy and Bonnie. He almost feels like a parent. The way he talks about Andy and Bonnie in this, especially Andy, is like a proud parent. He says like, oh, you weren't there from like Andy or Molly from the start, like when she was a baby and she couldn't go to sleep and she was afraid of the dark. And he does feel like a proud parent talking about fond memories of his kids. And what I love about him is that, even though he's Bonnie's toy now, there's a beautiful shot in the movie as well. God, I'm reading so much into. The more I think about it now, like, the more I'm loving this movie. At the end of the montage, the camera zooms in on the underneath of Woody's boot where it's got Bonnie's name written. Now, on the surface, you could probably read into that just going, oh yeah, remember the toys got passed off to Bonnie at the end. But like, that moment where it zooms in, you just know that inherently Woody isn't Bonnie's toy. He will never be Bonnie's toy. Underneath that paint of that foot is Andy's name written there. And Andy will always be a part of him. The other toys seem like they've moved on and they're happy in their new environment. Woody is very much tied to Andy, and I don't think he can shake that. And I think that when he speaks to Forky, he understands that. I talked about the concept of the inner voice and the conscience and everything like that. Seawood Man's checking out. Thanks for tuning in, man. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys. I'll see you on the next review, man. What was I saying? The concept of the inner voice in this movie, the conscience and everything like that. With Buzz, it's literal. It's the voice that he's pressing, which, haha, it's a funny joke, but they've done Buzz down. With Woody, it's an actual conscience that's in him. And I feel that Forky is that representation, that physical representation of that inner voice that helps Woody understand what he needs to do. And Forky feels like that vessel of that character. I think he even doesn't he like help Gabby discover what she needs to do, or her happy memories and everything like that. Forky's that kind of character that features in the background. He's not focused as heavily as you expect him to be, but he serves a very, very strong purpose in the movie. And the goodbyes to the toys, I'd say this is a slight negative. Like, it's a beautiful moment, and of course I was in floods of tears watching this scene, the goodbye to the toys at the very end of the movie. I do think they could have hit it home a little bit more. Maybe like, Woody going up to all of the toys and saying goodbye to them. But I felt like it needed a stronger goodbye with Buzz Lightyear. Maybe it was a case of that we didn't get much dynamic with Buzz and Woody throughout the rest of the movie, so their bond didn't feel as strong in this movie, so that when we get to the end and they say goodbye, it felt a little bit flat. But I do think they could have dialed it up a lot more. Maybe their reasoning for not doing that was because maybe they think it was too similar to the ending of Toy Story 3, saying goodbye to all of the characters again. Sarah says when Woody gives his sheriff badge to Jessie, she absolutely sobbed. Yep, that got me. All the way throughout this bit, I was ugly crying. Completely and utterly. We hit the credits, and there are some like fun little mid-credit scenes. There's no after-credit scene. There's just a couple of mid-credit scenes, which are always fun to watch, and slightly lessen the emotional blow at the end of these movies. At the end of Toy Story 4, I really don't want them to make any more. This one didn't really need to be made, but I think the story they came up with was a fitting story. I do have a few problems, as I mentioned, with Buzz Lightyear and the other toys, and I do feel like the emotional goodbye could have been perhaps a little bit more emotional at the end. But you can tell that the people at Pixar do genuinely care about these characters and the story they're telling, especially with Toy Story. I think Toy Story, especially for them, is incredibly special to them because that was the first feature-length movie they made, the first fully animated feature-length movie they made. They were the original characters, they were there from the start, and they're still here now. So I think they do, I think all the team at Pixar, old and new people that are still probably working there, they do have that affinity for the characters, and they don't want to turn out a bad product. Where do I think the future of Toy Story is? Well, this is according to Wikipedia. We do have some insight as to where the future of Toy Story is going to go. So I'm reading this directly from Wikipedia. It says that a 10-episode short form series, Forky asks, sorry, I've been talking for a very long time. A 10-episode short-form series, Forky Asks a Question, will debut exclusively on the Disney Plus streaming service upon its launch on November 12, 2019. A short film titled Lamp Life will reveal Bo Peep's whereabouts between leaving and reuniting with Woody, and that will be released on Disney Plus later in its first year. So we are getting two spin-off series. We're going to get like a fun little offshoot one with Forky, and we're also going to get that a short film, Lamp Life, with Bo Peep, which will be in between the two films, which will be interesting to see. And of course, I'll watch that. Like, give me all of the Toy Story stuff you can. But with this streaming service, like, will they do more Toy Story shorts? I'm kind of fine with shorts if they do it, but if they find a way to get all the toys back together again, I do think it is going to lessen the impact of this one. Now that I know that Toy Story 4 is a thing, I think it will be very interesting going back and watching Toy Story 1, 2, and especially the ending of 3. An ending that I felt incredibly emotionally wrought at because I thought it was the end of Toy Story for good. Now I know that there's another one, Toy Story 4. I'm wondering if the impact of that ending will be lessened somewhat, or maybe I won't get as emotional at it now because I know that there's going to be a fourth one. So I don't know. I've talked for a very long time at this, and I'm very tired, so I apologize if I've been a bit, scattered on this review, or if I haven't been as with it or as animated or as emotional as I usually am. I am very, very tired. But thank you to everyone that's tuned in and commented throughout. Sarah, thank you very much for sticking through all of my review. I know you was very interested to know what I would thought on this movie, and hopefully you appreciated my review. Maybe you agree on my review, maybe you don't agree. You've put agreed in the comments, so you agree on it. But yeah, overall, go and see this movie. This movie is going to make a lot of money. Kids will appreciate it. There's some danger, there's some horror in there. There's some jokes that adults will appreciate. And I genuinely think that Toy Story is that animated, series of films for any age. Like, there's going to be the real audience for this movie is kids my age, 26, 25, 26, 27, round about that age. They're going to be the age that appreciate this the most. You're going to have parents that watch these films with their kids. Like mom and dad love the Toy Story films because I was so into it as a kid, and they watched them numerous times when I was watching it as a kid. And the sad thing is, and this makes me feel so incredibly old, because it's been 9 years since Toy Story 3, you're going to have kids going to see this movie that weren't even alive when Toy Story 3 came out. Let that sink in. The time keeps ticking, the years keep going, and I'm sure this isn't going to be the last we see of Toy Story. I genuinely believe that. We're probably going to get a Toy Story 5 at some point. Only time will tell. I will be 36 years old. I will be on the good side of 40, I will say, or pushing 40. And I'll be going to see Toy Story 5. So if this channel's still going, if YouTube's a thing, if the Earth is still going at that point, I'm sure I'll be back with another review for Toy Story 5. But again, big thank you to everyone in the comments, everyone that tuned in. The next review, I have seen Godzilla King of Monsters. I do need to do a review on that. And later in the week, I'll be seeing Men in Black International, which I still haven't seen. And the new Annabelle movie comes out. Annabelle Comes Home, I believe it's called. So I might even jump on like a review of Godzilla in the week, just so we've got some content coming out on the channel. Or I might do a double review or even a triple review towards the end of this week, where I review all of the movies I just mentioned. That'll do it for me for right now. And until the next review, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.